Halloween was a holiday that the kids in Royal Woods look forward to every year. It might be and was a night filled of staying up late, costumes, parties, and the best of all, candy. There was no different for the kids of the Loud House. The younger sisters looked forward to dressing up and getting candy, while the older ones accompanied them or went out to Halloween parties. They always went out with their decorations, lining up the yard with pumpkins, which they carved themselves, and other scary things courtesy of Lucy. This year was no different. It was for Lori, Lenny, and Luna's turn to take Lincoln and the younger sisters out to get candy. Luann and Lynn would stay home and hand out the candy, and their parents were going out and headed for a costume party. Bobby was actually away for the week. He was back in the city, working and visiting family. Lori didn't have to mind so much, though, as he was making money as they can use for the baby. She knew how much Ronnie Ann missed him. Lori was in her second trimester and the morning sickness was nearly gone, but she had new symptoms like nosebleeds, heartburn, shortness of breath, etc. Oh, and her belly had grown quite a bit. She did look pregnant, but only when she wore high, tight shirts, and she still wasn't really ready for people at school to know, so she wrapped up her usual babe blue tank top under some more baggy shirts, much to Lenny's dismay. "Come on, Lori, look at all the cute clothes you could wear," Lenny said, holding up some shirts that she got from her closet. Lori was standing in front of the mirror, and where she was looking at herself, and had a shirt that was the same color as her old one, but this one was baggy, and she had to make sure that her belly wouldn't be seen. "No, Lenny," she started. I'm much more comfortable in this." "But why?" Lenny asked, confused in her tone. "Don't you want everyone to see your cute little baby?" Lori pushed down her shirt so that her belly could not be seen poking out. "Not yet," she said. "Well, aside from you guys, I'm not ready for everyone else to know." "Oh," Lenny said, looking at the floor. "So I guess painting out tonight is out of the question," Luann said, poking her head out of the door. Lori turned around with her arms crossed. "No, I thought I would literally be cute," she said. "I just don't want anyone at school to see it. Not just yet." "Aw, man. Are we gonna have fun?" Lynn said, popping out next to Luann. "I know, and I would go for it, and I know how you feel." "We understand, Lori," Luann said, "but maybe we could do it after? We'll see." The girls satisfied with that question and left the room. "Are you guys excited for tonight?" Lenny asked. "I'm excited for the kids to have fun," Lori said, "though I haven't been feeling so well lately." "Mom and Dad said that you could stay back and hand out the candy with Luann and Lynn if you want," Lenny told her. Lori shook her head. "No, I want to see the kids have fun. That's my favorite part about Halloween." "Are you sure, sis?" Lenny asked. Lori nodded. "Yes, I'm sure. Just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean I can't still go out and have fun." "All right, let me know if you need anything, okay?" Lenny smiled, and then she put her hand on Lori's shoulder. She responded by putting her hand on top of Lenny's. Of course. The evening came, and the house was bustling with kids who were out excited trick-or-treating or tricking people. Lincoln stepped out of his room with a big smile on his face. "I don't know if I should feel happy or illuminated," he said. He decided to go for a cat for Halloween, and Lenny thought that she'd do the same thing in ours for his makeup. Lenny then came out of her room with a smile on her face. "Aw, look how cute you are," she said. She made her way towards Lincoln. "I'm not supposed to look cute. I'm supposed to be intimidating," he said with his hands on his hips. Lori came out of her room, raising an eyebrow. "Please, Lincoln, you cried when your pet fish died," Lori said, rolling her eyes. "Well, he was a good fish," Lincoln said, pouting. "Don't worry about it, Linky," Lenny said, taking her one eyeliner pencil. "I'll make your totes look scary." She kneeled down in front of him, grabbing his face so he wouldn't move. Lincoln then closed his eyes and felt the pen drag across his face. Lenny stuck out her tongue in concentration and stood up. "There, now look," she exclaimed, putting her hand out of the mirror. Lincoln then looked himself in the mirror, and he had black whiskers and a black nose, and he grinned. And he looked at Lenny. "It looks great, thank you." "No problem, Linky. You look so nice, Lincoln." Lincoln jumped back out as soon as he heard Lucy popped up from behind him. "Lucy, stop doing that." "I'm a vampire. I could travel at the speed of light," she said, with a little smirk on her face. "Why are you even dressing up, Luce?" Lynn asked. "Don't you remember last year you scared the neighbors' kids?" "Yeah, it wasn't even Halloween," Lincoln said. Lucy shrugged her shoulders. "Good luck on getting any candy with those costumes," Lola said, strutting out of her room. She was dressed up as a pink princess. "Don't I look fabulous or what?" "Not for long," Lola screamed as Lana tackled her to the ground. "Help! Someone save me from this hideous dragon!" Lola yelled from the floor. Before anyone could help, they both rolled their eyes on their backs, laughing. "Perfect, Lana," Lola said, getting up and dusting herself. Now that's how you get more candy. Oh please, you think that will maximize your chances of getting sugary confection? Lisa said, aside from her room. She stepped out wearing a blue and white checkered dress. Really, Lisa? Lola said, where did you find that thing? Linny helped me, Lisa said, smirking. Besides, it isn't the best thing I could do. The twins smiled and looked, and their eyebrows raised. A small barking could be heard. Do you guys leave Charles outside again? Lincoln asked. They shook their heads and turned towards Lisa's room. Ruff, ruff, Lily said as she crawled out of her room, dressed as a black dog. Lisa then picked her up and placed her in the basket. Everyone, meet my Toto. Aw, they all said as they looked at Lisa and Lily. Cuteness is how you get candy, Lisa said. Lana and Lola stuck their tongues out, and then Lori came up to them. Are you guys almost ready to go? We are, but how come you're not? Lola asked. Lori crossed her arms. I'm not dressing up this year. Why not? Lana asked. I just don't feel like it, Lori said. Besides, I don't want to take all the attention away from you guys. She ruffled Lisa's hair. You all look so cute. Well, you won't get any candy that way, Lola said, shrugging. Okay, guys, be honest. They all turned around to see Lenny standing in front of the doorway, dressed as a deer, and had a big smile on her face, and she did a pose. How do I look? She said. You look so pretty, Lola said. You always look good, Lenny, Lincoln said. Thanks, guys, Lenny said. It took me a half an hour to do this makeup. Oh, yeah? And do you think it'd take you a long time? They looked as Luna stepped out of her room, her face painted to look like a skeleton. This, she pointed at her face, took me an hour. Nicely done, sis, Lenny said, giving her the thumbs up. Are we all ready now? Lola asked, stomping her feet. I want some candy. Now, Lori said. Crankiness princesses don't get candy. Lola pouted. Lola, come on, Lori continued. Put a smile on that face and change your attitude, or you get to stay home. You hear me? Lola looked down and nodded. Yes, ma'am. Lori put her hand under Lola's chin and made her look up at her. Hey, why such a long face? She asked. You're gonna get a bunch of candy, remember? Lola perked up and smiled. Can we go now? Lori looked around. Yeah, let's go, she said, standing up. The baby is craving for chocolate. The kids all cheered as Lori, Lenny, and Luna led them down the stairs. Are you two gonna be okay by yourselves? Lori asked Luann and Lynn as they reached the bottom of the stairs. Of course, don't worry about us, Lynn said, waving her hand downwards. Luann grabbed the bowl off the table. Yeah, we got the best candy, she said. She leaned over to Lynn and softly, best, as if the kinds the kids don't like. She and Lynn burst out laughing. Well, that means more for us, Lynn said, wiping a tear from her eye. We'll be back later, Lori said, heading towards the door. Remember to keep the door locked when you're not using it. The girls nodded. The free teens led their younger siblings out of the door, ready to take on the neighborhood. The Louds lived on a well-off neighborhood in the shrubs, filled with big houses, and big houses meant more candy. Behold, siblings, Lisa said, stepping in front of the tracks. They reached with a pocket of her dress and pulled out a small pie chart. If you look here, I've calculated the best houses to get the maximum of Lisa's sweet confession. Street name, Candy. Nice job, Lisa, Lola said, clapping her hands. Now we can really see who has the best costume. Lisa then put the chart back in her dress. Yes, we will see. They came up to their first stop. It was a house on the street that was about the same size as theirs. An older woman with gray and blonde hair and was standing on the porch with a big bowl of her candy. The kids decided to go all up at once so their costumes would be a fair game. The kind woman smiled and she watched the kids come up to the steps. Oh my, what big bunch we have here, she said. What do we have here? She moved her head back and forth, observing them. A kitty, a vampire, a big scary dragon, a pretty princess, Dorothy, and all little Toto. Ruff, ruff, said Lily, crawling back up to the porch and sitting on her legs like a dog. Wow, your kids did a fantastic job, the woman said. You all get some candy. They all held up their buckets and dropped a handful of candy to them. Thank you, they all said, as they headed back to their older sisters. Be careful, and happy Halloween, she yelled as they walked off. Look how much I got, Lola said, holding up her bucket. That's nothing, Lana said, holding up her bucket. I got way more. On the contrary, Lisa said, all of our costumes were great so that we all each get our fair share. Great job, you guys, Lori said. If you keep it up, you'll be eating candy for weeks. Lana looked at Lori and raised an eyebrow at her. What? She said. How come you didn't dress up? Lana asked, confused expression on her face. I just didn't really want to this year, Lori said, avoiding Lana's gaze. Lana turned her head and she was trying to understand. Oh, I get it, she said. You're too old. Luna chuckled. trying to avoid Lori's scowl. Yes, Lana, Lori said. I guess I am. She then turned around and looked at her. I didn't want to take away any attention from you kids. Okay, Lana said, smiling. They kept on walking until they gathered to the house, and a long time, a big red one. Lori, Lenny, and Luna stood on the curb, watching their younger sisters going to get more candy. They are having so fun this year, aren't they? Luna said. Ed, yeah, and those toads I haven't seen the twins wore them in such a long time, Lenny said. The laughing could be heard nearby. Lori turned around to look, and she felt a cold sweat drop her neck. She saw Carol, a little group at the house next door. They were all dressed up and laughing at who knows what. Lenny then looked at her sister with a worried expression on her face. Are you okay, Lori? She asked, reaching out to put a hand over on her shoulder. Lori turned back to look at her sisters. Yeah, I'm okay, she said, wiping her forehead. Her expression changed to what's his 6 younger siblings, running up to them. Look how much I got, Lincoln said, holding his basket so that everyone could see. Great job, guys, Lenny said, reaching down to pick up Lily. Oh, Lori! Lori then looked down to see Lana standing in front of her. What is it, Lana? She reached down in her bucket and pulled a piece of chocolate. I asked the lady for extra chocolate because I told her my sister's having a baby. She had a big smile on her face, and she spoke. You said the baby wanted some. They heard a few gasps as they all turned to see Carol and her friends looking at her. Their mouths were wide open, and their hands were covering them. Lori turned to look at Lana with anger. Lana! Lana jumped back. What? She said. What did I do? Lori pinched the bridge of her nose and grabbed her hand. Come on, let's go home. But I haven't got enough candy yet, Lana objected. You hear me. We're going now, Lori said. She turned to Lenny and Luna. Watch the others and try to be home in the next half hour, okay? They nodded. They walked back to the loud house, Lana being objected the whole way. She planted her feet on the ground, trying to get Lori to let go of her arm, but Lori kept pulling. Come on, Lana, she said, pulling her away. I can do this the easy way or the hard way. She reached down and picked up Lana, holding her bridle style. No, she yelled. I don't want to go home. She moved around, trying to get Lori to release her. Stop that, Lana, she said. You don't want to hurt the baby. Lana stopped moving around and was quiet for a few seconds. Lori heard her sniffle. I don't want to hurt the baby, she cried, little tears in her eyes. I just want the candy. Lori frowned and then saw her face. You got candy, sweetie, she said. It's almost your bedtime anyway. But you said I hurt the baby, Lana sobbed. They made her way upstairs the walkway to the loud house, and a few kids were standing on the porch. Excuse me, guys, we live here, Lori said, pushing for the crowd. Before it could open, it was Luann and Lynn appeared at the door. Their gaze fell upon Lori and a crying Lana in her arms. What happened? Lynn asked. I'll explain in a bit, Lori told them. First, I need to get inside. Luann and Lynn parted through the door so Lori could make her way inside. She headed towards the couch and Lana sat down gently. She grabbed a bucket full of candy so that it wouldn't spill. Lana sat down on the couch, tears coming down from her face and snot dripping from her nose. But what did I do? She said, wiping her nose on the costume. Did I hurt the baby? Lori kneeled down in front of her. Lana, please, just listen to me. Lana looked at her with her face so full of sadness. I didn't want anyone to know about the baby yet, Lori said. And when you handed me that chocolate and when the girls standing nearby that I know and now the no... Lana looked at her, trying to understand. I said too much? Lori nodded. Yes, and now the kids at school are gonna know. Lana started to cry harder. Oh, Lori, she yelled, grabbing into her. I'm sorry. Lori patted her on the back. It's okay, Lana, she said, smoothly. I'm not mad. Lana wiped her eyes. Then why did you take me away? Because I feel that there was something we need to discuss together in private, Lori said. You know, not in front of people. Oh, I get it, Lana said. She kneeled up and looked at her. But Lori, you didn't answer the most important question. What is it? Did I hurt the baby? Lana asked with her voice shaking. Lori shook her head. No, sweetie, she said, grabbing her hand. The baby's just fine. How do you know? Because she took Lana's hands and pressed down against her belly. I can feel them moving right now. She watched as Lana's face lit up. You feel it? She asked. Lana nodded while holding her head, a big smile on her face. I do! I finally do, Lana said. Good, Lori said. Now let's get you ready for bed, and then we can eat some of this candy tomorrow, okay? She kissed Lana's forehead. I know the baby will love it. She wrinkled, and of course Lana smiled and winked back, and she grabbed her bucket of candy and headed upstairs. Luann and Lynn came into the house, shutting the door behind them. Is everything okay? Luann asked. Yeah, it is now, Lori answered. Are you sure? Lynn asked. Because you don't look so good. I'm sure, guys, she said, waving her hands. I am going to help Lana get ready for bed. She began to head towards upstairs. Watch for the others, okay? They should be back soon. The girls nodded. Lori went up the stairs and made her way towards the top, and she felt her legs collapse beneath her and falling to her knees. She could feel the tears poking through her eyes, waiting to be released. She crawled over to the spot by the stairs and, sitting up so her back was straight against the wall, and put her legs up against hers. She then let out small tears from her eyes, trying her hardest to be quiet but not to alarm her sisters. She knew that Lana didn't mean to reveal her secret to anyone and just wanted to keep it to herself, but she knew that she loved her and the baby so much and she couldn't get mad. But now she thought about it, how hard it was going to be to go to the school with everyone knowing that she was pregnant. They'd call her names that she didn't dare repeat in her mind, and she found out that they were calling her the other girl names she didn't deserve. Girls were so mean. They didn't understand what it would do to have another person growing inside them. The little feeling of flutters in their belly, and the thought of one day they'll have someone look up to for their advice. That same one, someone will cry for many hours of the night, but it was worth it because you'll love them. They'll come in home one day telling you that the new friends they made fun at school. Lori smiled and thought those thoughts flowed in her head. Yeah, they just don't understand. Oh my gosh, Lori! She looked up to see Lenny standing in front of her. Are you okay? Lori wiped her tears from her eyes. Yeah, I'm fine, she said, her voice shaking. Lenny kneeled down in front of her. Are you sure? Lori nodded. Lenny frowned and put up her hand on her shoulder. Let's go to our room. She pulled up Lori's hands and pulled her up, and then they headed towards their room. I thought Lori was going to help me get ready for bed, Lana said, getting into bed. She had to take care of some stuff, sweetie, Luna said, as she then headed down to bed next to her. What kind of stuff? Lana asked, just curious. Luna thought for a moment. Grown-up things, she said. Don't worry about it. She got up and then went to the bookshelf. Which story do you want to read tonight? How about the one about the snake? Lana said happily. Luna grabbed the book on the shelf and went back to her. As she began reading her, she noticed that Lana seemed a bit restless. What's the matter, Lans? Luna asked. Is Lori okay? She asked. Luna closed the book and moved closer. She'll be fine, she said. Lori's a big girl and she can take care of herself. Are you sure? Positive, Luna told her. Now how about we get some sleep, little dudette? Lana laid her head on the pillow and Luna pulled the covers up her neck. Sleep tight and don't let the snakes bite, Luna said softly. She bent down and gave Lana a kiss on the forehead. She made her way out of the room and closed the door behind her. She then headed down the room where she saw Lori and Leanie's light was still on. She knocked on the door softly. Come in. Luna peeked in her head for the door and saw Lori sitting together on Leanie's bed. Hey guys, Luna said as she walked in the room. Is everything okay now? Leanie nodded while Lori shrugged. Luna sat down with them. Still upset, huh? Lori nodded. I know Lana's sorry, Luna told her. I just put her to bed and she wouldn't stop talking about you. I know she didn't mean it, Lori said. It's just, I don't know, she said. To look up her sisters. Maybe I'm just making a big deal of this. I mean, I'm pregnant and I have hormones going everywhere and I'm bound to overreact, right? Luna placed a hand on her shoulder. I think you did the right thing, she said. Lana will get it over by tomorrow. I hope so, Lori said. But what am I supposed to do at school? She looked down. I just know Carol and her cronies are going to spread it around. Linny and Luna looked at each other. Don't worry, you don't have to worry, sis, Luna said. Lainey and I will be there with you. Yeah, and so will Bobby, Lainey said. If anyone messed with you, they'll have to deal with us. Lori looked up. You guys are right, she said. I mean, people who are going to find out about it anyway. I guess it's better they did know, right? Don't worry about those girls, Lori, Lana said. What's important is now that your focus is on school and the baby. That's true, Lori said. And all those important things are important right now. Oh, and I almost forgot, Lainey said, reaching into her purse. After you left, this girl came up to me and pulled out a piece of paper. She said she wanted you to call her. She handed the piece of paper to Lori, and oh god, I think she was pregnant too. Lori took out the piece of paper in hand and looked at it. She smiled at the name that was written along with the phone number. I'll give her a call tomorrow, Lori said. I think I'm gonna get ready for sleep. Me too, Lainey said. Thanks for your help, girls, Lori said. I don't know what I would do without you. Luna got up and hugged her. No problem at all, sis, she said. I'll always look out for my big sis and my baby. She put her hand on Lori's belly. Good night, baby. Good night, Lori and Lainey. She then headed to her room. Lori got up and then prepared to put on her PJs. Good night, Lori, Lainey said as she climbed into bed. Night, Lainey, Lori said. As she took off her shirt and stood at the mirror next, she could see her stomach was just poking out a bit. She looked down and then put her hand on top of it. And we've got a big, long road ahead of us, baby, she said. But it'll be worth it. She grabbed her blue nightgown and put it on, and before she settled down, though, she decided to do her nightly rounds. She slipped out of her room quietly and started with Luna and Luann. They both made their way down the hall. After checking up on Lisa and Lily, they had one destination left and was always looking forward to most. Lincoln had his lamp on, lifting to assume that she was still awake. She grabbed the doorknob and poked her head inside. He was laying on his bed with his orange pajamas, just staring at the ceiling. "Hey, Link," she said, softly not to startle him. He looked up. "Oh, hey, Lori." Lori looked at him. He'd been acting strange for the past 2 weeks, and she often asked him if he was alright, which to answer he said, "Yeah, I'm okay." As an older sister, she couldn't help but feel concerned. She knew that he was lying, and this time he would not be able to get himself out this time. She went over and sat next to him. "Look, Linky," she began. He sat up and looked at her. "Yeah?" She put her hand on his leg. "You know, if something is bothering you, you could talk about it to me, right?" He nodded. She turned to him. "So is anything you want to talk about?" He looked. "Yeah, I suppose." She frowned. "Does it have something to do with Lucy said a few weeks ago?" He nodded. "What do you want to tell me about it?" she said gently. He sighed. "It doesn't matter." "Why would you say that?" she said. It'll always matter." "No, it doesn't matter because, well," he began. She scooted over close to him. "What is it?" "You already have enough to worry about right now," he said. "I don't want you to worry about me too." "Oh, Lincoln," she said. "You're my little brother, and you're always the matter to me," she said, grabbing his hand. "No matter what I'm going through, you can always talk to me." Lincoln looked up at her and had a smile on his face. "Thanks, Lori," he said. "Well, it's kind of hard to explain." "I'm all ears," he sighed. "Well, do you remember a few weeks ago when Lucy said something about feeling alone?" She nodded. She overheard me talking to myself, and I guess, well, she started. Sometimes I feel like the odd one out." "What do you mean? You have Luna, and has Luann, and you have all each other," he continued. "I don't have anyone." He looked up at him confused. "So you don't like having your own room?" He shook his head. "No, it's not that," he said. "You have sisters and the other girls can talk about girlfriends. Me, I don't have a brother, and I only have the other guy in this house, which is my dad." Lori nodded, and she started to understand. "So what I'm getting at is that sometimes you feel left out because you're the only boy?" He nodded. "What about Clyde?" "He's my best friend," Lincoln said. "But sometimes I wish I had a brother, you know. Someone who I could share my room with, someone I could talk about my things with." As Lori saw a sad expression on his face, "I know how you feel to be left alone. The truth is, Lincoln," she said, "you're never alone. We may not all be boys, but you are our brother, and we love you so much." "I know, and I love you guys too," he said. "But is it just always that feeling so much, you know?" She used his hands to call him over to sit with her, and he crawled over and climbed onto her lap. She wrapped his arms around him. "I hate that you feel that way, Linky," she said. "You know just how me and our sisters, we love making sure that you're included in things too." She kissed his hair. "You're part of this family too." Lincoln sniffled. "I know, and I'm sorry I feel this way," he said. "Don't be, Lori," he said. "Your feelings matter too." Lincoln wiped his eyes. "Thanks, Lori," she said, wrapping his arms around her. "I love you." "I love you too, Linky," she said. "And I bet you're hoping for a boy, aren't you?" He nodded. "Yeah, that'd be awesome," he said. "But I would love it even if it's a girl." "Me too," she said. "I love him so much." "I love him too," Lincoln said, smiling. "I'm glad you feel better, Linky," she said. "Now get some sleep. You got school tomorrow." She released him, and then he crawled back to his bed. Lori gave him bun and kissed him on the forehead. "Good night, Linky," she whispered as she headed out the door. "Good night, Lori," he whispered. And then she slowly closed the door behind her, leaving a small crack. She stood there and watched his eyes flutter as he drifted off to sleep. "I love you, Lincoln."